There we are. Hello and welcome. Um, I would like to ask Mr. Wolski to come forward and present the budget workshop session for us. Please, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, and before you start, Matt, this front row of lights, it probably works great for when people are performing, but right now it's kind of blinding me when I look up and I try to read my papers.
I need it for.
Okay, never mind. If you need it, leave it on. I'm good. Thank you.
So tonight we're doing our first look at the budget for 22-23 school year. This is obviously early on, so what I'm presenting tonight is just the first look, and we will make changes as we go through the process in the coming months. Iroquois vision is revised and new. It is building on tradition to support and encourage all to excel through innovation, inspiration, and inclusivity. Our mission has also been updated and changed. The Iroquois Central School District will provide academically challenging, relevant, and purposeful learning experiences in partnership with parents and the community. We are committed to an engaged and inclusive approach that encourages innovation and creativity, preparing students for success in an ever-changing world.
And I'd just like to, again, thank everyone that was on the strategic plan committee and the board members that were involved with this, of coming up with or in developing these. They're excellent and greatly appreciated.
It's a few seconds of speaking, but it was a lot of work to get to those words. Considerations for the budget process. We are, of course, we're committed to serving our students and putting the best forward for them in everything we're doing. Committed to exercising care and judgment and managing the resources. Committed to doing things in an open way, objective, professional manner, and future focused, planning and committed to constant improvement. So here's the agenda for tonight. It won't be too involved. As we progress through the budget process, these will get a little more detail in these presentations, but this is the first look tonight. Our philosophy: planning to protect instructional programs against state aid fluctuations and tax levy fluctuations. For this year, some of the concerns are the same as past years. We always look at that federal funding. We receive grants for IDEA 611, 619 supports our special education program. We receive title funding, Title I, II, and IV. And we always kind of watch those because there's always some threats sometimes that some of that funding is going to be reduced. So we are mindful of that because that does support our programs here. Big news for this year's consumer price index is now at 4.70. So we've all seen in different things that we do in our home life, buying food, buying gas, buying anything, that the prices have gone up. So we are definitely impacted by that. We see that in the school, the bills the school pays as well. So the tax cap and state aid really doesn't consider CPI. The tax cap calculation is in fact capped at 2% growth on CPI. So they don't address this increase in cost that we're going to see.
I really like the way you said that, where you said it doesn't consider it, because a lot of people think it does. It just doesn't.
It considers
at all
it,
address price index.
It considers if it's below 2%, we're adjusted downward with our tax cap calculation. If it's above 2%, it does not consider that.
Correct. Well said.
And then there's new state mandates that come out that can drive our instructional program to do things that we haven't done before, incur more costs. We always are mindful of those. And we always watch the state aid distribution philosophy and how that may change over time, and the impact on our different factors in our district, like the combined wealth ratio, our student counts, and things like that, and how it's going to affect our future state aid funding. Looking at past voter results, looking at last year, we were approved on our budget by 77% of the vote. Transportation was 78% of the vote that approved that, so we had great support, and we thank the public for that. If you look at the previous year, that was COVID. It was mail-in only on voting, so you see there's a lot more participation in voting, but similar numbers, a little less on the approval. but it falls into where we've been for the last 7 or 8 years, where we're between 65 and 78% approval consistently. So that's been great. And again, we thank the public for that support. Fiscal stress monitoring system is in place to kind of identify districts that are having issues or problems before they grow into bigger and bigger problems. So they assign scores to every district. We have had little or no score on these, which is a good thing. It means we must have some things in order. We have reserves that are appropriate that can address fluctuations in the future. So this is one of the areas where the state wants us to have reserves, in fact, because it's good for, they know it's good for long-term financial status of the district. So right now we're in very good standing. Review of tax rates. This chart compares on the left side the tax levy increase, and then what the equalized tax rate is on the far right side. Equalized tax rate being the average when you consider the equalization rates that are in all of our 6 towns, and you put them all on equal footing, what's the tax rate look like? And you can see that that's been dropping consistently over the last 6-7 years. And that's driven by those property values in our area. Property values are going up. There's a lot more value to spread the tax levy on. So we'll see those rates coming down every year, it seems. So doesn't mean, don't be fooled and think that your tax bill is going down. It just means your property is going up in value and the tax rate is adjusting for that. So we always say your tax bills, individual tax bills will vary depending on changes in assessment and equalization rates. And we don't know the impact of equalization rates at this time because those don't come out until July, August timeframe.
If you don't mind if I'll jump in here real quick, because recently in the news, there was talk of a town or a couple towns moving from Erie County to another county, or talking about changing who they associate with county. No town supervisors called or contacted me at all to talk about it. So just want to make sure everyone knows that. And I was asked the question of what are the potential implications to Iroquois. So let's talk about boundaries first. Right now, we already have households that are in towns not within Erie County, Bennington. So the county you're in, it's okay to be in a district that has its center in a different county. You look at districts south of us, they cover many different counties with it. So would a township leaving Erie County to another county change the boundaries of the Erie County School District? There's currently no mechanism I know of that would cause that trigger. I've had to work on boundaries before for like when there's a subdevelopment going in and trying to make sure that they follow boundaries around household lots that are put in there. And how we had to do that was with our local BOCES. The district that we were talking with, in that case, that was one to the west of us. And it would also include the state education department. Nowhere was any county or town involved in that. We are a municipality like a town, and we operate independent of the towns. One thing that you do have in Erie County that you would not have in Wyoming County is Erie County shares sales tax receipts with the school district. So that's a revenue. If people were to leave Erie County, I would fully expect that the funding mechanism, how much funds Iroquois gets from the county, would change because we have a smaller population, smaller geographical area. And it would change for all other schools too, because if we're getting less funds, those funds still have to go somewhere. They're a formula, so they would be redistributed out to other school districts. So in looking at that, John and I sat down and kind of played around with this a little bit, because what we did is we took the townships that we heard the names of and compared them to Bennington, which is already in Wyoming County. We found the identical current equalization rates, and we looked at what the price difference would be, and we did some calculations that we thought would be appropriate for the sales tax. And we believe it'd be between $3 and $4 per 100,000, or sorry, strike that. $3 or $4 per thousand assessed value would be the change. Again, we would really have to dig into this sales tax formula to see how that would change. And would that mean that's what they would see on their bill? No, because also you have, would equalization rates change on top of that? Would property values change on top of that? But if everything was to stay the same, the way it is today, we would estimate between a $3 and $4 per thousand assessed value increase for those households. And we also, go ahead.
Not assessed value, tax increase. They would pay $3 to $4 per thousand more in taxes.
No, $3 to $4 more per $1,000 for their assessed value. So if their house was assessed for $100,000, it'd be between $300 and $400. Increase in taxes.
Not
Yep.
increase in their assessed value.
No, yeah, correct. Not increase in their assessment, increase in taxes.
On their tax bill, it will be $300 to $400 more.
Yep, and if their assessed value was $200,000, it'd be $600 to $800.
If it's $100,000 house, it would be $800.
Yep, correct. Yep,
And you're talking $3 to $4 per house if they're in that, if you're in the other school district's county, right?
correct. And it's per thousand. So think of how many thousands your house is assessed for. So it's not $3 or $4, it's $3 or $4 times the assessed value.
And again, that's based
So
on,
so the house, people that live in the other other counties that our school district would be in, their taxes would go up. So that's what you're saying.
Correct. Yep, because they would no longer be getting any sales tax contribution to reduce taxes that they have been getting. That would leave.
and again, that's an estimate. We don't know the equalization rates, what they're going to be in the fall, but is everything the way it stands right now? That's kind of the rough estimate that we came up with.
Have you communicated that with the other towns or counties or the people that are bringing this to our attention, that they are thinking that they should switch counties? Have you brought that to our attention, that the taxes might go up for those people?
Right now, none of the supervisors have contacted me with the concern. It's just something that I heard on the news where the county executive responded, stating their taxes would go up. And that's why we're doing it now during the budget session, so that people watching this or at home would realize this. If they in earnest started moving forward, I would think in full disclosure, this would be an informational piece that would need to be get out there, and John and I would have to actually dig into it and have better numbers and better facts. So we would actually have to contact Erie County with the sales tax division to see what the changes are. So we're not giving a wide range of estimate, but we've narrowed it down. It wouldn't be exact, but we could get closer.
Thank you.
Yep. Sorry to hijack that a little. Is there any other questions about that piece though from the board, just in case you're asked that in the grocery store? Okay, John, all yours. Take it back.
All right, we're at the tax cap calculation. There are these 4 different factors that kind of play into things. So when we look at our calculation for next year, again, that's 4.7% CPI is there, but we are only allowed to go up 2% on that growth factor. Pilot payments are increasing, but very slightly. They won't influence things very much by going up by about $10,000. Tax-based growth factor is what they assign to us. That's what gives us that increase that's going to be above 2%. They're saying our area is growing, our school district is growing by about, less than 0.5%, less than 1%. So we get to build that in as well into our calculation. And then there's exclusions. There's a local capital expenditure exclusion, which doesn't apply to us this year. And if there's retirement system increases over 2 percentage points, we get to make an adjustment, and that's not happening as well. So these factors, of course, can lead to a levy that's below or above 2% in reality. So when we look at our calculation as it stands right now, at the bottom, it comes out to about 2.51% increase, or $794,102 of a levy increase to support our budget for next year. This is an estimate right now. If we'll continue to monitor, if anything will change. Occasionally a pilot payment comes in or something loose comes in to kind of alter things just a little bit. But if this, I don't expect much to change here, and we'll have to submit this number to the controller's office in March. State aid for 22-23, the governor presented the executive budget on the 18th of January. In past years, everything's very different now with the new governor, but in past years, this was the first look at the budget. It's the first starting point of negotiations, as they would say, in aid discussions. And between now and April 1st, things could definitely change. But the process is different this year. Included a $2.1 billion increase in school funding statewide. 1.6 of that 2.1 is dedicated for foundation aid. Additional funds were allocated for what the governor said was strengthening our teacher workforce and supporting students' mental health. We don't know the details of what that really means yet. Again, it's a proposal that has been put out there. Other highlights of the governor's proposal. Interesting one, require all bus purchases to be zero emissions by 2027. So any new buses that you're buying by 2027, if you're going to buy, we buy 3 or 4 buses a year, we'd have to start buying zero emissions buses in 2027. And our entire fleet would have to be changed over to zero emissions by 2035. That's a proposal. It hasn't happened yet, but it's out there right now. So right now, the main driver of the issue with electric buses, we all know they're lower maintenance costs, they're lower fuel costs, obviously with electricity being used. Just the prices right now are very high, and they're roughly double the price of a gasoline or a diesel bus. Well, we're seeing those prices drop quickly. So this may be feasible. I don't know for 2027. And the governor's budget also continues our UPK funding. We started with UPK funding this year for 38 students, and we see that continuing to be supported for next year.
John?
Yeah.
Question?
Oh, yeah, I have a quick question. Did you see the grant information about the electric buses? No?
No,
Okay.
I did not yet.
Sorry, I thought I took it.
And of course, with electric buses, you have to have all of the infrastructure to support electric buses. You have to have the charging stations and what's the impact on the grid of this area and how much can they support when we're trying to charge 30, 40 buses at one time. So all that stuff has to be worked out in the details. So with this said about
John,
foundation,
sorry, with the UPK program, do we know if we're gonna expand that further, or are we just gonna continue to do what we've been doing last year?
the funding is clearly linked to 38 seats, and that's all we
Okay.
have.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of districts have asked to bump that up over the years, and usually it just remains flat. They don't typically increase that.
Okay, thanks.
Based on foundation aid, our district is going to receive the minimum foundation aid increase of 3%. There's about a third of the districts in New York State are receiving 3% under foundation aid. The other districts in Erie County, at least, I see variances from 3% to 29% increase on foundation aid, and everywhere in between there. But again, we're getting 3% on foundation aid. When I put together the state aid estimate for next year, I have to look at those expense-based aids, which are driven by expenses that we incur this year, plus that foundation aid increase. And I'm right now estimating about a 1.2% increase year to year in our state aid for next year. And there's various reasons for that with our expense-based aids primarily. We'll continue to evaluate the state aid picture because, again, we have 2 more months of negotiations. Those numbers may be driven up, we hope. But we'll have to watch and see how the process progresses. We still do have the federal funding in place, American Recovery Plan, elementary and secondary school emergency relief. These are accounted for separately in the special aid fund. And these are allocated for 2 or 3 years to address COVID learning loss. And we talk about supplement versus supplant. These are supposed to be temporary things that we implement to address COVID issues and learning loss. It's not supposed to replace state aid funding and that kind of thing. Here's some of the things that we've done with the money. Response to intervention staffing. We have 2 days a week, we have after-school staffing and transportation for after-school programs. We're bolstering the professional development opportunities for our staff, providing elementary literacy specialists in the 3 primary buildings, district-wide behavioral specialists, and we've added a social worker to support the middle and high school. So even though these are driven by this grant funding, some of these things we may want to keep at the end of that, and we have to kind of fold those into the budget possibly in the years to come, and we'll watch those. So we look at total estimated revenues. Right now we stand at about a 1.88% increase in revenue to support our budget.
You know, while you're talking, I was just thinking, if you back up to that federal funding, we are actually at a presentation from the Erie County Association of School Boards, which we are lucky enough to have the executive, I think if I can look through the lights out there. So thank you, Mr. Lowry, for coming here to our district. And there was a Dr. Rick Timms that presented, and he said one thing with the federal funding that we should do, very advantageous, is to not only supplement, but also use some of it to supplant. And John did do that. I just wanted to let the board know that because you had seen that presentation. We did follow through on that, so that was a good piece to know, that all that advice that we saw in that presentation. So thank you to the Erie County School Boards for having that for all the board members, and we followed through on all of that.
That American Recovery Plan is posted on our website, and you can view the details if you'd like, with our application and all that kind of stuff. On the expense side, in this budget that I'm showing tonight, we kept all the supply codes where they are for this year we're in now. So again, we are seeing that's 4.7% CPI increase, but at this time we're going to keep all those supply and material codes frozen where they are. Staffing, we're going to continue at the 21-22 levels, but we are having discussions with principals and looking for opportunities to make changes and right fit everything for our district. We do notice declining enrollment in different areas, so we want to address those and make sure we have the right staffing in place. We're also going to review impact of retirements in different areas and see what we do continuing on with those positions and how we replace those. Estimated health insurance increase, we are going to say around 5 to 6%, which is probably lower than what the outside markets are doing. But we've had fairly good success with our self-insured plan that we're doing. So 5 to 6 is what we expect next year. And we continue to support the scheduled replacement of one-to-one devices. And we do approximately 2 classes a year that we replace, and then some machines get moved down to other younger grades. So we're going to continue that replacement process into next year. Capital outlay project, we always include a $100,000 project in the budget because we're allowed to do that, and that's the maximum we can do is $100,000. We're going to, this past year, we had a project to put in, update the firewall in our middle school, 5th, 6th grade cafeteria. We're going to continue with another project to kind of upgrade that space. It's used for various things like after school programs, a rifle team uses it in there. And so we're looking to maybe do some more renovations in there, make it a better space for everybody to use. And we would do those changes in the summer of 2023, not this coming summer, but the next summer.
This summer from the last capital outlay, do you remember what we're doing? Is it windows?
It's the firewall upgrade to that cafeteria.
That firewall, so it will be remaining in that same cafeteria.
Yep.
Excellent, thank you.
And retirement expenses, we always look at these because we've had years in the past, maybe 5, 6 years ago, where these things were really fluctuating every year and were very difficult to deal with. We're seeing a very slight increase on our TRS contribution, about 5%. And we anticipate a decline in our contribution rate for the employee retirement system. That's a little bit more tricky. They don't give us one number because there's different tiers and different rates to those tiers and how many employees do you have in each of those tiers. It's a little more complicated, but we'll see a slight decline. And when you average those two, probably no change in our allocation for retirement expenses for next year. So here's the rough look at our expenses at this time. seeing increase 3.73% in the instructional programs and employee benefits about 3.72%, for an overall budget increase at this point in time of 3.25%. So when I look at those revenues I had shown earlier and expenses I just showed you, we are at a difference of about $736,000. But there's really, it's a manageable number. We'll look at how the state aid progresses. We're going to look at those expense areas. We're going to look at our staffing, all that kind of stuff. And we'll close that gap up as best we can by our next presentation.
And then really, the blue that's in there where it talks about core mission, providing instruction is our priority. And that's where Love John does a great job with all the numbers, adding them, putting them together, maximizing revenues, minimizing expenses. But it really comes down to what we can do for the community, for the children in the community, to provide them a great instructional experience that really looks to propel them into the future. And in looking at one of these presentations, you tend to see numbers, but what do those numbers give students? I'll be talking about the middle school production the other day and talking to the students at my cabinet, and they say these experiences, these life experiences are really what makes Iroquois special. And I just want people to realize that as they listen to what John says, because it can be easily lost when you're just looking at numbers, the future of the children, because how they end up in society, it's like paying it forward, because it will return. All right, thank you.
So next steps, we'll finalize that tax cap calculation. Again, we're continuing our discussions with departments and administrators to see what they've envisioned next year being. Review our current plan for reserves. We are changing very much what we're doing to our reserves for this budget, which is probably good. I like to keep those pretty consistently used every year and not fluctuate a lot. Evaluate retirements and enrollment changes. Monitor and adjust state aid projections, and review the BOCES projected contracts, because we have to look at those students that use those programs as well and get accurate counts on those so we know going forward what we have for next year. So looking ahead, the vote date is May 17th, 2022. Proposition 1 will be the general fund budget, wherever we land on that. It's not finalized yet. Proposition 2, replacement of 3 diesel buses. We did, again, remember years ago, we tried gasoline buses. We did 4 of them, I think. The way things have flipped again with diesel fuel prices and the performance of the gasoline buses was not great in different ways. It is more cost effective to stay with diesel at this point, until I guess electric comes along. And also a 130 passenger cutaway wheelchair equipped van. It's just replacing what we already have in place, not really adding, but replacing things that are getting old and need to be replaced. And those prices do include credit for 4 buses being traded in, and approximately $16,000 total.
So that's 4,000 per bus, John?
Correct.
Approximately how old are the buses that we're trading in?
I think they'd be in the 8, 9.
8 or 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it just seems, I don't know if there's much of a market for used buses out there, but it just seems over that time period, we're paying almost $132,000 per bus. And 8 to 9 years later, we're receiving $4,000 for that bus.
We're gonna think about using Auctions International, the local company Auctions International, to maybe look at putting those out and trying it. We can always not accept the results of that, so that might be an option that we're going to look at this year too. Because you're right, it seems like very little based on what we pay for these.
Yeah, I would imagine too. It's pretty, it's a pretty close group of companies that deal with the buses, so they're pretty much dictating.
Yeah.
And if we can get away from that, maybe we can get a little more value.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then proposition number 3 is a new thing for this year. We talked about it prior board meetings. I think Doug's going to kind of comment on this a little more, but it's looking at purchasing the Elmont Volunteer Fire Company Station number 2. And here's some details if you want to see what that property looks like compared to, in blue, you see the existing property that we have and how this is right against that and greatly expands our coverage on the other side of the road for future development.
Are you on the slide with, like, because I can't see this.
I'm on the picture of the
Blue and the
station.
green?
The picture of the station. Oh, I'll go back to the blue and green for you.
No, no, that's okay. I just wonder, are you on the picture with the house?
Yep.
All right, if we go to the next one, that's where I'd like to jump in.
So again, right there, purchase price $470,000. It was built in 2008 on 6 acres of land. The building itself is approximately 5,000 square feet. Source of funds, we're going to say available district fund balance, so that we don't have to do borrowing or have a tax impact by making this purchase happen. So here's the things you might want to comment on, Doug.
The immediate benefits in that?
Yep. Well,
Or are you on no additional
the
tax?
questions, this is the question. So what is
All right,
no
I'm
additional
good.
tax?
Yep, no, right, right. So this is one thing John and I spend a lot of time talking about, because we hear how other districts present it, and we want to be crystal clear on this. All money that school spends is either local tax money, sales tax money, or state tax money. So that's where our funds come from. And in looking to the future and everything, we do our expenses through the year, and then with the end of every year, we have money that we want to put into a capital reserve. So John will correct me if I'm wrong. When we say no additional impact, no tax impact, what does that mean? That means instead of the funds at the end of this year going into a capital reserve, we would use them to purchase this facility. Well, that's our tax dollars. You say no tax impact. And what we mean by that is when we look at this, in looking from December of 2019, and I do have just the pages from that with me when we did a lot of presentation and we did an inventory, our architect helped us with this, and we looked at all different things, had discussions of future things and what we wanted to do with the district looking forward. We wanted to support STEM, and there was an estimated cost in there to do a room for STEM of a little over $800,000. What would happen by having this building across the road, we could move back office operations over there and then use that room so we wouldn't have to spend this $800,000, which means then instead of doing it through a capital project, instead of putting the money into a reserve, then having a capital project and building the room, it would happen more immediate, and that cost we could take out of future building condition surveys. Yeah.
What do you mean by back office operations?
So that would be things, anything that would not have students attending it. So my office, John's office, special ed office, buildings and grounds, a print shop, offices for maintenance, things like that are back office operations.
What are you planning on moving?
Right now, because it'd be in the high school over by the STEM, we'd be looking at the print shop because that is right next to the STEM room. So that would make a nice location for them. It's a high room, it's already air conditioned, so it has great benefits for it. The other one is provide expansion space for future capital projects. And so when we look at the grounds, we have some Morton buildings that are very close to it that prevent expansion, would prevent, we've talked about pools or additional classrooms. They are in the way of these. So by having this facility across the room, across the space, we would not have to build a structure to house what's in them now. So if I just pick the Morton buildings, and people are probably familiar with, because all the middle school parents pass them when they're dropping kids off, they're red buildings right there, kind of by the track. Those could be taken out of that area. They could be removed. Everything that's going on inside of those with grounds could now be in a building across that we would have to, if we didn't have the new player hall building, we would have to build a building to put those in. We wouldn't have to do that, and that's a cost of $1 million. Actually, the estimate was higher than that, but I didn't like a number higher than that, so I lowered it down to $1 million. To rebuild those, yeah, to rebuild those.
What do we do with them?
The buildings that are there, they would actually be raised. I don't believe there are buildings that are movable. If I'm wrong, we would have land now that we could actually move them to. So hopefully we can take them apart in pieces and reconstruct them, but don't quote me on that because I really don't know. The two right outside my office are, and the other ones I think are old too. I just don't know what we could do with them, which is why I just have that for raising them. So therefore, when you put the $1,800,000 together, you get 1.8 million, which shows that the district, there would be a difference of, I come up with 1.4 million when I take the cost. These are, ballpark numbers. I'm not going to the penny. When you take the cost of purchasing the fire hall with 6 acres, did you say, John? Yep, with the 6 acres. So it really does provide a lot of opportunity and takes care of some things we've already looked at in the future of what we would want it. So it's always tax dollars, but we wouldn't have to do something to build them for the future. Any questions on that? Did I explain that clearly? Because John and I really want to be clear about any taxes and tax money and where it's going to the public. So next slide. What are the different opportunities? And I've mentioned this before, but now it's actually on writing. It'll be on the website rather than me just saying it, so you can go back and reference it. Student safety, because you would have a student evacuation center, so that would be very helpful. Increased instructional space with relocation of the back office operations, which we answered what those were. Centralization of buildings and grounds, which would increase efficiency. Some of those temporary structures from 1960, which we have mentioned, there'd be the replacement of those immediately. And increase in care, maintenance and care of equipment. And please don't misconstrue that we're not taking care of equipment now, but by having this facilities, rather than having to sit outside, it could sit inside and be maintained better in that manner. Long-term benefits, this is where the offset cost would come from, the reduced future capital project costs. By all means, there still will be capital projects, just like in your house, you have to take care of it and keep maintaining it. Space for possible future transportation requirements and future instructional spaces opportunities. And by that, there could be additional things that we're able to move, increasing the space there. Any questions on that? All right. Thank you.
And the final piece, there is a board member seat open. You can see our website for more information on that. The web address is listed there, or you can contact Mrs. Speck to get petition information on that one seat.
And I want to put in here just for the board to ask this question to them before we move forward and put another proposition in. During the district planning conference, what's that?
Did somebody resign?
There's one seat for vote. It's not, we're not saying anyone's not running. We're just saying there's one. Last year there were 2 seats for voting. Every year there's either 1 or 2 seats running. This year it's only 1 seat.
I have a budget question, just whenever you're finished saying what you're gonna say, it's about budget.
Go ahead, Louise.
Go ahead.
Oh, Sharon, sorry.
It's Sharon. My question about the budget, it is very much tied in with the question that we revisited a few times, that is a technology question. But for me, as a board member, I don't see it necessarily as curriculum related. I see it as budget. In the fall, when we had teachers who wanted to access their Google Drive, we asked the question, how much would it cost for them to be able to do that? And I know since then, there's been committees, there's been committee meetings. In hearing discussions from the meetings, I think there's a disconnect between the intent of the question, because for me, if it's a $10,000 item, that's a $10,000 item. We're talking about thousands of dollars here in these budgets for different things. If it's, $1 million item, it's a different question. However, the conversation seems very much to be around to curriculum, and somewhere along the line, I think there's a misunderstanding in what at least I know I was asking for when I asked that question, because I don't believe that the teachers were asking to switch from Microsoft to Google. I know that's something that's been talked about. I know that's been something that I think people think that the board thinks that. I don't. I understand exactly what the teachers are looking for. And so it's now February and that conversation is still ongoing. I can see that there's curriculum related pieces that may be important, but for me, I would like that information because we're looking at a budget, and if it was a $10,000 item and something that was helpful to our teachers that they've been consistently asking for, I think I would completely support it, understanding it is what they want. So
Yeah, so actually, I talked to the director of technology today. He has set up a meeting where they invited me, and I don't remember if it was Dr. Dudek or not, to one of their meetings, and then they want to do a presentation actually, while he was talking to me, is I said, are you doing a presentation this, February to the board on this from what the work they've done? And he said, no, we're planning on presenting in March. So I'll go to that meeting and then they will be presenting to the board in March.
Is there an opportunity in the federal funding with the American Recovery Plan to access some of that money to expand the technology so that we can better deliver curriculum and support, there could be more opportunity for SEL access and curriculum through additional technologies.
I think there is, John.
So why couldn't we access some of that money?
You could adjust the grant to include that.
Yes, we can
correct?
revise things as
Yep.
needed in the future years, yes. But if it's gonna be a long-term cost that we're gonna just be using from then on, it's only a couple of years of that funding is gonna be available.
But
right?
we've used that funding to hire people.
Hmm?
So those are ongoing long-term costs.
Some won't be.
Yeah, that's the the supplemental, those are the ones that are in for a short term.
Yep.
And the supplant ones, those are the ones that are not, that we would be using funds that come back
Yep.
for them. Because we shifted what we were using it for to there, but we did not add any cost to the district. But you are right with that, and actually even going from that idea, that is something that you could use like the ladder. You do a lot of it one year, then a little less, and slowly build it into a budget. So that is a way that would help.
To Sharon's point, $10,000 is a lot of money, except that we're talking about like 1.8 million to house maintenance equipment.
Correct.
And that we're talking about 10,000 to give our children and students access
Yep.
to additional technology and additional curriculum and additional resources and teaching opportunities and learning opportunities. And we've spent almost 6 months debating it. And I still don't understand it. I don't understand it at all.
Michelle, I understand your point that you're making, and I agree that it is important to give the teachers access to the tools that they need in order to have successful programs. But
Agreed.
comparing that to maintenance and maintenance storage, that's just as important. If we don't maintain our school, the teachers aren't going to have a building to teach in.
Right.
So
It's always a balancing act.
it's a balance, yeah.
Okay.
we are talking about a year where we've consistently said, we understand how challenging this is for teachers. What can we do to support our teachers? What are the barriers that they're encountering? And we've heard directly from teachers, this is a barrier they are encountering. So while we've been discussing it for 6 months, they're continuing to meet that frustration, and we continue to hear that. And so to me, that directly impacts student learning. And that's, it's a very long time to debate it. Can see debating long-term changes. I completely understand that. I don't think anybody was looking to make the shift from Microsoft to Google. However, that would be a major shift in the district, and that's certainly not our role as school board members. This, to me, is more of an emergency situation where we are looking at, hey, I used to be able to do this to make my job easier and to access more materials and to share materials with other professionals easily, and I can't do it now. And
It's frustrating.
that's why I see it as something we should have been able to act on faster.
I agree with Sharon on that. If there's anything we can do to expedite that and find out how fast we could, if we all approve on it, how fast that could be moved on, so these people could get some kind of closure on this.
Yeah, and I believe that's one of the things the committee was looking at, because as much as these teachers are frustrated with the Google, there's other teachers frustrated with the desire for other programs they want to use. And so they were looking at a way of how do you take care of all these desires, exactly what you're talking about. And I don't like the word desires because
What were the other
it's more,
things that teachers
I don't,
were
I
asking
don't know
about?
that Ken has that list of what they are. And that would be part of the presentation in March.
Technology.
I do think that technology is different from other areas in that with technology, with some areas of curriculum, we look, we research, we move forward together. We learn it together, we grow together. In my experience, almost 30 years from having an IBM 6 computer lab in my room,
I
is it
remember
possible
those.
to move people together in technology? Because we have teachers who know way more than any of us do. We have people who will lead in an area and then show and then bring people with them. And they're all going to do it in different areas. And that's really realistic for the way the world is. Our kids are going to go out in a world where they could see Google and Microsoft. And so having people embrace both is not a bad thing. Having people embrace multiple things rather than limiting people. I just think it's a unique area where we say we want to be forward thinking. We let people go as far as they can possibly go. For me, the dedication of people being willing to be on a committee this year is unbelievable, but it shows it's important. And so I just want maybe the people on that committee to hear exactly what, I don't want any misunderstanding of what it is that the board would like to hear. What do you need to do your job well? And that's what I'd like to hear.
And I think that's a great statement to make for them, for when they do their presentation, so they have it very pinpointed. I think there were some beliefs that there was question about the switching that you mentioned, and you clarified very nicely that the board's not looking for that. And saying this is what we want to know, I think is perfect.
I think the board supports teachers coming forward and advocating for themselves, the tools that they need, because they're the experts in what they're doing. And that's what we want to support.
Then they will be here, March, to give that right to you. Backing up a little bit, we did talk about unless you want to talk more about that.
So who's making the decision on all these things that people want? And when are these decisions going to be made?
It'll be presented to the board, and then we will have to, if we're going to move forward with that, that's something John would have to build into the budget.
When is it going to be presented to the board? If there's a whole list of things, and Sharon said they've been waiting 6 months for this.
March, next board meeting.
And then the
And
results.
that's going to be presented by Ken, and then there's estimates of cost, or?
It'll actually be presented by the teachers that are on that committee along with Ken. It won't be Ken himself.
Oh, so there's a committee of teachers, and Sharon, you're familiar with the suggestion, and that committee has that on their list?
I think so. And I think, I do know members are watching these meetings and hearing what the board has to say for clarity. So I think that, saying this here is a forum to stay in, I guess I don't see it as an either or this, but really, what do you need? We consistently say that with everything. We have a very detailed list of what the roof of every building in our school needs. We need a list of what our teachers need. And then, and hearing it from them will be great. And clarifying that, we're not looking necessarily at big program changes, but to support them in what they're doing, I think is a good message for them to hear. Hopefully that's still in time for us to look at addressing it in the budget.
Yeah, that's exactly why I was pushing to have it. I actually was hoping for February. But that's why for March, we definitely need it by then because that's where we'll be adopting in April.
So when you look at that timeline that's on the presentation right now, our next budget presentation is April 6th, and we'll use the results of that meeting in March, what we decide on. We'll roll those numbers into that April 6th presentation, and that's what you'll see then.
Backing up real quick though, unless there's more questions there with what we were just talking about.
So, sorry, so that's like at least another 2 months before we do that.
It would be, yes.
Even move forward. And then how long would implementation be?
That I don't know. I would have to ask that question for the training and everything. Which I think some of them are well versed, so that might be relatively quick actually. During the district planning conference, we discussed having board seats for the vote at large rather than for an individual seat. The last election was for 2 seats and you had to select what seat you went for. And if my memory's correct, we discussed having it always at large. I mean, granted, you really don't need it this one. At this one, but does the board still want to move forward? Because that would be a 4th proposition to go to the voters to make it at large. At large?
Yeah, I agree with that. That makes total sense.
All right, so what I'm hearing, so John, to the public, there'll be a 4th proposition, and we'll have that in our next presentation. Seats at large. And John, you can reach out to get wording and stuff at that from the lawyer, so we make sure we do everything correctly and appropriately.
Can we clarify, though, that the proposition is that it would change how a seat is voted on, but it doesn't change it for this election. It wouldn't take effect until 2023.
Correct,
Election.
And yes, correct.
If it
It would
passes.
not be this election, it would,
Okay.
or this voting process, because it's really not an election.
Right.
This approval by the
Yeah.
community, it would be years out. Only matters where there's multiple seats, and there would not be at this time. All right, John, if you want to move forward with,
That's pretty much it. I have the timeline here. We're going to have a presentation on April 6th, the budget hearing on May 10th, and then the vote is May 17th. Any other questions on the presentation tonight? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. 5 minutes before the meeting.
Thank you, John. We do have 5 minutes before the meeting, so we are going to take that break and we will resume and call our regular meeting to order at 7.
He can actually do this one earlier because on the agenda here you have Erie County Association of School Boards.
Okay, welcome. I would like to call our regular meeting to order. And welcome to all who have come to observe the meeting of the Iroquois Central School District's Board of Education. There are 2 periods of recognition of guests listed on the meeting agenda. The first is for comments regarding agenda items. The second is for topics not on the agenda. Speakers may offer comments related to school operations and programs, but the board cannot hear personnel complaints against any individual associated with the school system. Please address these concerns to the appropriate administrator. If you wish to be recognized, fill out a form and turn it in complete to the district clerk. As per policy 1514, public participation at board meetings by district residents, public comment is limited to 15 minutes total, unless the board suspends this limit. Each person is given up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. Additionally, no more than 3 people may speak on a single topic unless the board also waives this limitation. This is a meeting in public rather than a public meeting, which means we will not be engaging in dialogue with the members of the community this evening. District personnel will follow up with you regarding your concerns. Rest assured, we are listening carefully and take seriously what you have to say. Please demonstrate respect by speaking to the issues, sharing ideas and opinions, but not engaging in personal attacks. The board appreciates your willingness to share your concerns and celebrations. Please be advised that this meeting is being streamed live and the recording will be posted on the Iroquois website. With that, I'd like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Elma primary student Sophie Wiskowski.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now you smile, you pull your mask down and let your mom get a real good picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our high school 10th grade student, Samantha Current, who's going to update the board on several school activities. Samantha, you're up.
Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for attending and having me this evening. I'd like to start by introducing myself. I'm Samantha Current and I'm 10th grade involved in various clubs. I'm involved in Lead, P Club, Varsity Club. I'm a member of the Business Academy and I'm Secretary of Student Government. To start, I'd like to introduce our new event this year, which was PJs and Pajamas, where students would come down to their lunch period and visit puppies that had been brought in through shelter and had the opportunity to cuddle with them, and the dogs were super adorable. The photography class actually had the opportunity to come down and take adorable pictures of the puppies for the class. Second, I'd like to lead us into the Holiday Hoopla, which is our spirit week before our holiday break for the students. Each day, the student would dress up into red and green, then they would also dress up into ugly sweaters and crazy socks and hats. And on the last day, on Thursday, they would all dress up into comfy pajamas. For this year, we decided to have a little twist on the Holiday Hoopla, and we actually had a Polar Express day on Thursday. On Thursday, students came down to the cafeteria to enjoy a nice hot chocolate from student government with their friends and enjoy the last day before break. Next, I would like to say a few words about homecoming this year and Powder Puff and Pep Rally that went along with it. The Pep Rally and Powder Puff were events right before homecoming, just leading up into increasing school spirit. During the Pep Rally, students would come down a little before the school would end and they go down to the football field, which made it a really COVID-friendly event that we could host for our school. There, we held events regarding our school and our annual cheer, and it brought together the community and brought together us as a school. At Powder Puff, all students would come and join, and we had high participation, and the girls would learn how to play football from the guys, and the guys would learn a really cool cheerleading program, and it was a great event, and it brought everyone together as a whole. Next, our homecoming. Thank you for ITAC for supporting us and making it possible. We hosted it outside in the tennis courts in high school, and I, for one, can say that that was a very successful event, and we had the most participation that we've ever had for homecoming. Some plans for the future are we would like to introduce going outside and exploring the community a little more for a more COVID-friendly event base. And I'd like to explore the idea of bringing in bus fund again and allowing our students to go to places like Holiday Valley to go tubing, or just an easy day at Allen Meadows to go sledding. That way, I think it might be more COVID friendly and brings the school together as a whole. Thank you for your time.
I really like to thank you and the group too for looking at different things with COVID and what has, and really coming together some great opportunities to have the events and have everyone attend and bring everyone together. So thank you for all you're doing with that. That really makes a difference for everyone, especially during this time. greatly, greatly appreciated, so thanks.
Of course, thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you for your report, Samantha. And that brings us to board discussion and news worth sharing. First item on the, under this part of the agenda is ambassador reports. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say about what's going on in your school?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. A couple Fridays ago, I went and visited Alma Primary, the students and the staff there. It was a visit I coordinated with Darcy, and it was me delivering breakfast. And the teachers, some of them didn't know who I was, so it was a good formal introduction to them. And they said, well, why are you here? And I said, because it's Friday and you guys are doing an awesome job and I'm trying to caffeinate you and get you full of sugar. And they were very, very appreciative just to even have something in the staff room and somebody welcoming them to the school on a Friday. You could tell how tired teachers can get by the end of the week. And I said, if there's anything from a board perspective we can help with, to let us know. And it seemed like, if anything, I think Sharon mentioned it in the last board meeting, that trying to give teachers back some time to do with stuff that they would want to do, some personal time or whatever have you. But, they were very appreciative that I was there. So that's from the board perspective, that's what I've been doing for Alma Primary. Do we want to do other board discussions or go around first?
Oh, let's do the ambassador.
Okay,
Cool. Anybody else have something from their building they'd like to share?
So I just wanted to say thank you to the high school administration and everyone and the teachers involved in taking the kids to their senior trip at Disney World. It was very exciting that they could go this year. It was cold, but I heard they all had a fabulous time. And our new principal got to meet lots of students, and it's nice that you got to meet the seniors because you only have 1 year with them. Not even. And so that was great. Thank you for doing that.
Okay, if nobody else has anything, I have from Wales that the PTO and the building have teamed up for a building-wide kindness challenge for the students. Students will get to fill in a heart and hang it on a tree when they commit a random act of kindness, and the hope is to fill the whole tree. The PE teachers are kicking off the Kids Heart Challenge, and they're hoping to raise a good size amount of money for the American Heart Association by jumping rope, which sounds fun. I don't think I could do it. And then students are participating in STEM activities, and creating a time capsule activity that they hope will be opened on March 3rd of 2033. So that's kind of neat. And they're celebrating Groundhog Day with activities since they are the woodchuck school. So that's fun. They were disappointed that the groundhog saw his shadow, and we have 6 more weeks of winter. So that's it for Wales.
Hey, Matt?
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. I went to the high school PTO meeting, and it was excellent. The people are really involved. They're talking about, this was kind of interesting. To me, they were talking about Back to the Future, which hasn't been performed since 2019.
Yes.
And so it was interesting because a lot of the parents didn't know really what it was. So anyway, I think they're gonna maybe try and reinvent it a little bit to give it their own little twist, but also continue the tradition, which is really great and kind of in keeping with our new vision, which is awesome. And a couple of parents had asked, they were a little bit confused about social media. And so I did clarify that the Friends of Iroquois Facebook page is in no way connected with the Iroquois School District and does not represent us or get their information from us. And I just wanted to put that out there because I think people are very appreciative having that clarification.
Thank you. Hey, Matt, can you just keep an eye on us because we're not used to this setting. We're usually over in the STEM room if someone's not quite close enough to their mic, just let us know. And you might have to yell out though, because we don't listen too well. Thank you.
Okay. Roundtables. You have announcements about when they are and that. Thank you. Okay, so our staff roundtable is on the 16th? It's coming up, okay.
16.
The 16th at 2:45 in the middle school cafeteria. Our main campus staff will meet at 2:45 and the primaries will meet at 3:45. Our student roundtables will take place on Thursday, February 17th. We'll be meeting with our high school students from 10:08 to 11:34. And we'll be meeting with middle school students from 11:35 to 12:15. Wow, we're gonna have to run. Okay, we need to know what staff members will be at, or what board members will be at these roundtables for certain. I know that I will be at the student roundtables.
I will also be at both of them.
What time is the staff one start?
The staff one starts at 2:45 for the main campus staff, and the primary staff, we meet at 3:45.
I'll be at the staff one.
I will be at the staff one, but I can't get there until 3.
Okay. Okay, so we do have people coming to both. Perfect.
And I really want to thank the board for, with the students, because usually we were doing these after school at different times and moving it to the lunches where it really moves into their day. I think that was really an excellent reflection and change. So thank you for doing that.
I think it'll give us a better opportunity to meet with more students and hear a wider variety of things. And there'll be pizza.
So you have a lot of students.
They'll come.
And superintendents.
If you feed them, they will come. Great. Okay, the next item on the agenda is communications.
What?
Communications. You asked to speak about communications.
Yeah, so I think that Mr. Wolski has addressed that, and just looking at the importance of communication and being aware of what's going on in social media, and it's becoming a safety issue, so we really need to address that. And I'd like to know, a part of the strategic plan was a communications. It's a third of the strategic plan, so I'm like to, at some point, see where we are with that.
Yeah, and real quick with the strategic plan, just with all the changes with COVID, we haven't been able to change a ton with there. There have been little pieces we've been doing, like right with social media. There is a committee that's been created. We've had one meeting. I want to get another one in this month to keep that moving forward. And in those pieces, there are aspects of communication of getting out where we have internal, external, and the students. Mary Jo will be presenting on some aspects of it too when we get to curriculum and instructional updates.
So the committee, is that part of the strategic plan communications committee?
No, that is not. It has to do with the social media, the concerns that are happening when different inappropriate postings are done and how it impacts teachers and instruction and safety on the campus. So it's more of a safety, but one aspect is they're concerned about communication is, so those will be conversations that we're having in there in looking at that. So that's how we'll be breaking, one of the pieces we'll be looking at. It's not replacing anything. It's just a piece that they're concerned with that we'll have to take back to a strategic communications committee from them.
Is there a committee formed?
Not for the strategic plan yet committee. No, there is not one.
I think there's a deadline by like July, so.
Yeah, and that's where I want to get to that. And that's right now, COVID is crushing everything with all the changes that are going on.
Okay. All right. Next is the policy committee update.
Lucky, that's me too. So we had a really nice meeting this morning. It feels like this morning. It was like 2 hours ago. But Louise and Chuck and I and Doug and Nora sat down and went over a bunch of policies from around the state and even up and down the East Coast, and took what we thought most represented Iroquois, and in conjunction with the policy that we looked at the last meeting, that and tried to combine everything so that we can put something in place that will best represent Iroquois going forward. And so the update for the board and what we're going to have to talk about is there were a couple of highlights that we all agreed on, and we'd like your feedback. We definitely are interested in having a committee when a facility is being named, you know, looking to the community and the faculty and staff to have input on that. And we think that's an important piece that should be included in the policy.
Students too?
Yeah. The exact makeup of the committee isn't, you know, we didn't decide that, but just the idea of a committee, and yes, students, of course. And yeah, so there are still a bunch of details to work out, but this was our first meeting. So we just want to make sure that we're moving in the right direction, like with a committee. Everybody, you know, feels like we should have a naming committee as a part of the policy. The other thing we really feel is that the board has the ultimate responsibility for the naming of the official action that's being taken. Obviously, the committee will submit their recommendation to the superintendent. The superintendent will take that into account, make a recommendation to the board, just like we always do with an agenda item, but the board would have to vote on it. And lastly, we talked a lot about how many alumni and community members and faculty and retired administrators have had such an impact in our district. It's a small community, and you know, so many people are extremely successful, have given back a lot. And so the idea is that to name a facility after one individual can, one, be unbelievably challenging to pick one person when so many people have given so much in this community over the years. And so we're proposing that a facility would not be named after an individual, but more either a group or, you know, just some kind of acknowledgement of the community, and keeping that in mind so that we don't, the way it was worded was really nice, actually. I'm going to read it. The school district is honored by many employees, volunteers, community members, and students who have significantly contributed to the entire community. It is the tenet of the board not to dedicate a component of the facility to an individual, as it may devalue the contributions of others, which counteracts the board's intent to acknowledge the accomplishments of many. And, you know, we are a community and we all work together to do what's best. And so I think that's something we should think about. And I think Chuck and, not just me, I'm just, the policy committee wanted to present that to the board as something to take into consideration. Oh, and the last thing was that we're also going to include like plaques and monuments and memorials within this policy. Just, you know, there are ways to recognize individuals, but maybe naming a building isn't the way. Thoughts?
I like the idea of plaques and memorials to be able to acknowledge the individual while not doing so by putting a name on a whole facility or whatever.
What's been the past practice?
Well, I think that that's sort of the point of this policy is we don't actually have a past practice. Nobody can.
Facilities that are named after individuals, correct?
Yeah.
We do have facilities, the name was presented to them, or all the names were presented, you know, to the policy committee that's looking at this. How those came to be named, truly don't know,
The history of those are lost, so.
And I think, you know, they're, at that time with the different names, there was, you know, great intention and everything. But and that's why we're doing the policy, because there really isn't one.
I think we just need, I love that idea of having the opportunity for people to do individuals, but naming it as after groups. And I really like that because I always feel like unintentionally, somebody's feelings are going to be hurt. And we had a lot, just to remind everybody, we had a lot of interest by community groups, families, people who wanted to honor people that they knew with those bricks when we were doing that fundraising part of the foundation. So that seemed to be something that resonated with people, particularly that they would be able to honor in that way, specifically with names. So I keep wanting to remind us of that, make sure we don't lose sight of that.
Well, thank you, committee, for meeting, and it sounds like we'll be adding you to our board discussion agenda for March as well then, yes. Okay. Next is ECASB report. I've been fortunate enough to be working closely on all kinds of advocacy things. I spent most of today speaking with senators and assembly members and their staff, talking about education, legislation, the kinds of things that are impacting New York State schools, especially the schools here in Erie County. I did have the opportunity to meet with Senator Gallivan today, who is our representative. We talked about a lot of the focus in a very short amount of time was spent on looking at the foundation formula and how that is impacting schools, because we are using data that is decades old, and how that data does not actually represent the school district accurately anymore. So that was one of the big things. I know you went to a delegate meeting. You want to?
Yeah, I attended on January 27th, my second delegate assembly meeting. And members of local school boards also go to this one. It's interesting to hear some of the challenges that other school boards are facing. And they did highlight that the New York State SBA state mandatory prospective board member training is coming up at the end of March. It's required that if you're a prospective or a new board member within your first year, you have to attend this training. I attended it.
Actually, the training is required if you are elected, but the prospective board member is just so that you can make the decision if you want to run for a school board.
Yeah, there you go. So I did attend it last year. I wanted to learn as much as I possibly can about the role of a school board, what they can control and what they can't control. So I took it last year, and I was happy to have that knowledge. So starting out, so I was appreciative to being able to take it.
Yeah. So community members, if you're interested in running for a seat on the school board, there is a prospective school board workshop on March 26th. And if you're interested in that, you can go to ecasb.org and get the registration information there and be able to attend that. Anything else?
Well, yeah, I also attended, I think it was brought up, Rick Tim's presentation that was brought to us through the Erie County Association of School Boards. Again, thank you, Dave, for being here. You know, interesting, it's always interesting to hear Dr. Tim's. He has got such a handle on school financing and state funding. And it's become quite evident over the years that we always talk about a formula for state aid, and Jane referenced it. It uses, you know, better than 20-year-old metrics, you know, within the formula and things like that. But the sad part about it, and this isn't germane to the presentation he gave this week, I think it was the last presentation. They arbitrarily pick a starting point for the formula. And it's, you know, particular school districts that are being targeted. And if your demographics happen to fall closely in line with the particular school district or school districts that they're targeting, we are going to make out very well as far as getting our tax dollars coming back to our district from the state. Unfortunately for Iroquois, that hasn't, you know, happened. I think for the last, what is it now, Doug, 5 years that we've received a safe harbor. Prior to this year, we were receiving 0.25% increase in our foundation aid. This year, it went up to 3%. Again, that is the minimum that any school district could receive. The metrics that they use to determine poverty within a district, and poverty has such a huge impact within the formula in allocating those dollars to the school districts. And they're using free and reduced lunches for, you know, to gauge poverty. Well, we all know that, you know, going through COVID, everyone was receiving free and reduced lunches, but yet the state still relies on parents filling out the sheet and submitting it to the school for free and reduced lunch. So if you don't have that documentation, even though you may fit into that category, it goes uncounted. They've got so much information that they could use to actually determine the real poverty levels. As it stands now, in some of the small communities, they've had lottery winners. One lottery winner in a community has absolutely decimated their foundation aid. So, you know, there's a lot of things that need to be looked at. It's good to see the state is trying to fully fund us, but we still have to fight for the equitable distribution of those funds, and that's where the formula comes in, and that's what we really need to concentrate.
I often think for that, the hold harmless, which is usually 0.25% or 3%, should actually just be signified as CPI.
Yeah.
Because when the cost of living is lower, the districts will get less, and when the cost of living changes higher, because if we're not getting it with our state tax dollars coming back to the district, it has to be made up with local tax dollars, and it's just a way of shifting tax burden onto local taxes.
And we would have to go above that 60% threshold because, you know, as John explained earlier, CPI above 2% isn't taken into account at all in the formula. So the local share that we can actually raise is being held artificially low. And as we see the CPI continue to rise, it's going to cause more and more difficulty for all of the school districts in New York State.
Absolutely.
I also attended that training, and I can fully appreciate why, as our board is elected to have a 5-year term, because needless to say, I was overwhelmed with information, and it takes time to learn all this stuff, but it was a really impressive presentation. But yeah, it's a lot of information.
And Michelle, you had a legislative team meeting, yes? Do you have anything to report from that? Okay. Anything else?
I just wanted to, just one other point, just about the, how well the production of Aladdin was at the middle school. My kids are in 4th and 5th grade, and one of them has difficulty sitting still sometimes, and he was glued in to the performance. And both of them said, I cannot wait to be in 6th grade so that I can join the drama club. So that was a very well done presentation or play, and I was really glad to go to it to see it. Kids had a really good, everyone had a really good time. Everyone just walked out and
The
there.
middle school always pulls out all the stops. I love it.
Yeah, it was really amazing.
Great. Is there anything else anybody would like to share? Okay, then moving on to item number 8, superintendent's report.
All right, so the first thing is, well, the first and second thing is COVID update and test kit distribution. They kind of roll in together. Today, the governor of New York State addressed the state and labeled her address, talking about the next phase. And what really was focused on looking at trends since December 10th of 2021. And in it, overall cases are down, positivity rate is down, total hospitalizations is down, cases per 100,000 has decreased, new admissions for hospitals is down, vaccination and boosters is up, and hospital capacity is up. She did say that child vaccination needs to improve. And with this, and it's important to know, she did change masking mandate for indoor businesses. Schools are not an indoor business. We are something else. And so therefore she changed it for them, but she did not change it for schools. And she says where she didn't change it with schools and for other things is vulnerable populations. Healthcare settings, state regulated adult care, correctional facilities, homeless, domestic violence shelters, buses, bus stations, trains and subways, planes and airports. And in that group, she included schools and child care centers. So right now for schools, even though other areas have changed, we are still in the same portion. And she said she wanted to talk specifically about schools, and she went on with future slides. I'm sure her presentation is out there. That's actually what I'm reading off right now. And it was titled Keeping Kids Safe in School. And what she wants, and I already put out a message this Monday before midwinter break, sending test kits home with all K-12 students. So for everyone listening, my Monday message will explain what you need to do to have your child pick one up, but very quickly. If you send in a note, I'll tell you, either depending on the billing, it would be at a lunch or with your home or with your teacher that you would give the note to, and you'll be given a test kit to take home. And with that, the intent of the governor, and we did it before winter break, is before coming back to school, you would take a test and make sure that you are COVID negative right after the midwinter break. So you would do it on a Sunday night, and then as long as you're negative, you come to school, and positive, you would stay home and take care of what you need to take care of for being sick. And then she also went on to say 3 days after coming back, because of incubation periods and things like that, I'm assuming. And with every test kit that's going home, there are 2 in it. So therefore, they will be able to do that. So we would give the kit before they come home on break. And that'd be a great thing to do. Really, I think Iroquois is doing very well with at-home monitoring and not sending children to school that have COVID or symptoms, and they're getting them checked out to make sure so we don't spread it at school. Then she went on to say in early March, it says we will be making an assessment. So I'm assuming it is the governor and whoever else she's speaking to on the protocols based on the latest metrics of where we would be going in March for schools. what she's going to be having coming out, so there will be some time I'll need to spend at reading through this, is they're developing a new winter toolkit guidance. So the winter toolkit goals are protect the most vulnerable, increase vaccines and booster doses, strengthen the health system, empower local leaders, and support New Yorkers facing long-term effects from COVID. So I will be specifically looking at this when this comes out to see what is expected of schools and stick with our commitment of following the Department of Health guidance, the mandates, and everything from New York State and Erie County. The other day, the county executive did say that he would follow whatever changes come out for New York State. He didn't specifically address schools in that, so I don't know if it was just for local businesses or for schools too. Points to remember from everything what I'm saying right now: masks are still required in schools. Test kits are going to be going home. The parent would need to request it to get one. Developing new winter, the state is developing new winter toolkit guidance, which I will go through and get all the information that is needed out to parents and families. In early March, the governor and her team will reassess based on the latest metrics. Does anyone have any questions on what transpired today from her office? Okay, next thing I have on
I
here.
have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna ask you because you're the person who'll be in the place to ask the questions.
Okay.
But obviously, we know that there will be students and staff who will be in that most vulnerable category, who may be affected and need different options once masks are removed. But my question is, has anybody talked about then changes to some of the other policies? Because there's been repealing of things, repealing to test to stay, which we originally thought test to stay meant test every day of the 5 days, but now it's 2 of them. So now when masks come off, will it be still test to stay, but they're only testing 2 of those, so they'll be in school without that secure mask that's required now? So that's, if you ever get the opportunity to ask that question.
I will definitely.
That's a big one that I hear.
I will definitely get that. The Governor Hochul, must commend her. She is, this is new for this governor compared to the last one, is reaching out and meeting with the state superintendent, council of superintendents, PTA, and other educational groups. So that's great to see. The Erie County school superintendents are having meetings that they've been begun with the local health department in Erie County. So that's great to see that happening. So I will see if I can get some answers there from one of these groups as they keep moving forward and asking questions. And that might even be answered in the new toolkit that they have coming forward, because I would think that those are some of the burning questions. What is going to happen if you test positive or if you have exposure and things like that? That's a great question to ask.
And also, Doug, if you could get some sort of idea on the off-ramp, like what metrics and things, like if they said from a county perspective, we need to be below, 5% transmission rate or whatever our end state is, to have some sort of metrics, because those seem to be very unknown as well.
Yeah.
And I have mixed feelings about this whole mask thing, but I guess, I'm glad that the mask removal and the coming back from February break are not going to be commingled, because we should expect spikes probably a little bit after people come back. And if you take masks up at the same time, then you're going to say it's a mask problem. But in reality, people should expect peaks and valleys with this types of stuff, and more so when people go on break and come back. So, but just having some sort of idea on what's the end state and what the metrics are based upon that decision. Because just to say that, we're going to reevaluate it. I mean, our kids are going around in public places without masks effective tomorrow. And then in school, they have to wear them. And it's just very confusing, like what the end game is going to be.
Yeah, I definitely, and that was kind of asked of her in the question and answer, why are schools this way and businesses aren't? And she says, well, it's because students are a vulnerable population, and she didn't pick out there are vulnerable students, it's as a group, because they're with each other all day and they're sitting in closer proximity than they would at other settings. Not what I'm saying, I'm just saying what she alluded to in her things. And the metrics she seemed to be using today was comparing data, according to her graphs and even what's on the top of her slides, progress since December 10th. I'm not sure where the metrics of December 10th and why that date was picked. That was never stated. And that's where, for what they did with businesses, like I say, was overall cases, positivity rate, hospitalization cases per 100,000, new admissions, vaccines and boosters, and hospitalization capacity. So I think a key factor for her, because she made a special note that children vaccination needs to improve, had a graph on that and everything. I would think that would be something she's looking at. But I'll see if I can find out. That's a question we've consistently been asking and not getting an answer, because then we would know how close you're getting to hitting the metrics the state is looking for. So I'll keep working on that, and I don't think I'll be alone. I think all the superintendents in the area are asking the same question.
Okay, thank you.
But I think it's different too than where people are going by choice, right? Because we are saying to every staff member, student, and employees that we're trying to hire, these are the things that we have in place for you. So people want answers to those questions so that they then can make health decisions for their family. So the more specific they are, the more specific those families' conversations are as to whether or not they can be in the school building maskless, and then what their options are if they can't. I think those are the questions we have to be anticipating.
Yeah, and I think, I like what you said, because of choice, because I can choose which restaurant I go to, but I'm limited in my choices for where I attend school. You have your home schooling, you have your pro schooling, and most people choose public schooling. And so that's where people are going, but they're all kind of the same. So it will be interesting to see what's in that new toolkit. Any other questions about that from today?
So did she say when we're expected to hear from her again?
Early March.
Just early March?
Early March. I would hope, my secret hope is after we come back from the February break, there would be some type of, after a few days back, looking at any impact like what happened after winter break, that would be addressed and spoken to, one way or the other, of, wow, this is a lot more than we expected, or it's a lot less, or it's right where we expected it to be. That would be a hope of mine, so that they would come out and say that. And I know that'll probably be a question we ask at our meetings of, where are we in the scheme of where you think we should be, or everyone should be in the community? Anything else? Any other questions on that? Retirements, we really don't give the names out. We used to wait till April, just let the board know. We're actually going to be having them at the March board meeting, because we are, with the employment concerns going on, we want to start our postings earlier. So if anyone out there has a son or daughter that's looking to graduate this year in the educational field, our postings will be out in March, and we have 5 teachers retiring and 1 aide. We also have on this agenda, we have our director of special education who's retiring, so congratulations to her. She's had a long tenure here and has really implemented a lot of changes, and I think has really moved that whole area along with the teachers that she supports in that area. So thank you and congratulations to her and all of that. I'm going to skip recognitions right now because I always like to do that last, and I'm going to jump over to Mary Jo for our curriculum and instructional update. So Dr. Dudek.
So I wanted to take some time and thank you to board members for allowing me to just update you all on the curriculum instruction updates that we managed to still work on during these crazy times. In line with our strategic plan, Student Experience 1.1, we've been working and continue to work on the MTS program for our school district. For a number of years, we've had an RTI program at K through 8, and we moved to integrate both SEL and academic supports for our students last year into an MTS format so that we look at the whole child rather than in separate pockets. And we've also begun to expand into the high school. So what we've been concentrating on is differentiating on the needs of either the grade level or the particular building. So for example, at the high school, we've hired a consultant to help us with the understanding of what MTSS is and its implications and how it could look in the high school. It's very unique to have an MTSS program in the upper levels. Assessments, especially in the academic area, are somewhat limited. And so we're really seeking to understand how a really good quality program could look and how we could progress to support our students. So we've had about 4 meetings so far. Those will continue. The people included in those meetings are the high school administrators and the student support team, the counselors, social workers, and psychologists. And we're looking to eventually expand to include teachers as it becomes more formulated. At the K-12 level, we are finalizing our SEL measurements for survey level assessing for our K-12 kids. And then at the K-8 level, we are doing some really unique things based on the data we've collected from prior to COVID and also following COVID, and looking at our literacy scores of our students and trying to support literacy instruction in a more systematic and scientific research-based method. So we have, we've started at one of the primary buildings, and thank you again for helping us secure our TOSA literacy specialists, because although we're not full-time with them yet, we're still working them into the schedule. They are making a very huge and positive impact, working with some elementary teachers on the science of reading, and a group of the primary administrators, myself, and the TOSAs will be attending an asynchronous online, it's about 7 weeks long, on the science of reading so that we can get a really nice foundational understanding as we move forward on that. Excuse me while I flip my page. And then the last thing I wanted to report on was, it has to do with our strategic intent 7.1 on communication. This year, and it will be a long-term process, so I'm just laying the foundation right now. Our teachers are working on updating their scope and sequence coursework to match any new standards and any new assessments that will be coming out. It is very difficult work, and it requires a lot of thought and really good discussion. And the reason why I put it into communication is because our ultimate goal is to be able to make it available for community members via the website. It will take, but what I'm saying is it will take some time. And as we feel confident that it's a solid enough plan moving forward, then we'll start putting them up and letting everyone know when they're going up.
Thank you.
I have a question with the science of reading. Do we have a way to measure, the success or non-success of the program?
Yes, with the science of reading, it really, where we're finding that where we're finding our gaps is really in phonics and phonemic awareness. And these are foundational pieces that a K2 student really needs to be very, very strong in. That way, as they progress through their years of school and beyond, when they're faced with different types of text, it could be a poster, it could be a manual to put together something, or it could be a piece of literature. Students have those foundational pieces of understanding letter sounds and word blends, and letter blends, so that they can tackle words and build capacity and fluidity in their reading, so that they're not struggling to figure out the word, but instead they're paying attention to what they're reading. And that helps comprehension, that helps vocabulary. And so that's where we're really concentrating our first few months and year with our TOSAs.
So we should then be able to translate that to improved performance by our students within the next year and a half, 2 years.
We would like to see some solid growth. You had asked specifically about measurements.
Right.
We use AimsWeb as our survey, iReady as our diagnostic. And it's in those, by using those assessments is how we were able to identify those weaknesses. And now through the benefit of, we have a number of teachers who are taking their own time to listen to podcasts, to do book studies, to go to conferences, and they are coming back excited because they want more. They want to learn more. And oftentimes, educational research can sometimes be delayed. And what's exciting about it is because we're learning new things ourselves. We're continuing to grow professionally.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last item I have is recognition. So first would be Ms. Evans and Ms. Ferger. They have been selected to participate in the New York State Master Teacher Program in the Western region. And I mean, there's tens of thousands of teachers throughout the state. And these are 230 master teachers, are dedicated professionals. They're going to be in that group, and they represent 159 school districts. So we actually have two of these, two people in that. So that is excellent for them to get in there. From the middle school, they had 37 RTI exits from their winter benchmark, which is superb. The whole idea of RTI is to get in there and have, I don't want to say issues, but have learning loss from COVID addressed. And so there are a lot of 37 people had great success in there. 40% of our fifth graders scored above the winter, above average in the winter AimsWeb math benchmark, and the fall benchmark of well over an average, the well above average was 22%. And so that's some great growth going on there. And the last thing I have was actually stolen from me already, because I went to Aladdin, and it was a phenomenal program. And I was really enjoying it. The voices of the students were spectacular. I can't imagine how they'd even get better by the time they get to high school. And what stole the show really was the flying carpet, which I believe one of our graduates helped come in and weld. And so that's, we had people from the high school coming down, graduates coming down, everyone giving back. And I'm telling you that the students were spectacular. So when you said your children were spellbound sitting there in it, I can truly see that. So great job to all the directors and choreographers, and for the great performance. And it was great to see all the students, coming down the aisles and everything during the performance. And that's what I have for tonight.
Thank you. All right. That brings us to item number 9, recognition of guests regarding agenda items only. We do have a few people who would like to speak. The first person I'd like to call up is Carrie Stolka. I didn't say your name, butcher it too badly. But please come to the microphone.
Hi, my name is Carrie Stadolka. I have 3 children in middle school at Iroquois, and I'd just like to talk about the middle school STEM night. My daughter's in the STEM leadership group that is planning this year's STEM night, and last week they were told that STEM night was going to be held virtual. I contacted Mr. Esslinger asking him to at least consider holding the event in person, as I don't think it's fair that other groups such as drama and sports are able to hold in-person events but not STEM. COVID cases have dropped dramatically and the event is over 3 months away. He replied that over 600 people attended the last in-person STEM night, and with current restrictions, the school would not be able to accommodate that many people. Saturday night, I was able to see the wonderful middle school musical Aladdin. The students put on a fantastic show, and it was so nice to see all their smiling faces. Due to the fact that Friday's show was canceled, many additional people were allowed to come to Saturday's show. With over 70 students and faculty, plus the audience, I would estimate about 450 people, all in the auditorium. I do not see how this many people in one location is any different than having 600 people at STEM night spread between the library, cafeteria, gym, and classrooms. Mr. Esslinger also mentioned that he looks forward to having the event in person in the years to come. This does not help the current 8th graders who will not have another opportunity to participate and have not had the opportunity to participate in the leadership group since they were only in 5th grade when the last in-person STEM night was held. Let that sink in. Current 8th graders' last full normal school year was 5th grade. Interacting with people face to face is a skill that is learned and mastered. The current mandates are crushing children's opportunities to learn these important skills. At a time when neighboring states will be dropping school mask mandates within the next month, my daughter is told that an event over 3 months away must be held virtual. This crushed any remaining hope I had that New York schools would soon be on the same path. Parents have been patient long enough. It does not make sense to mandate masks now that the CDC has stated cloth and surgical masks are not effective at stopping the spread of COVID-19. N95 and KN95 masks are readily available to anyone who wishes to protect themselves. It is time to allow parents to choose what is right for their child. It is disappointing that the students of the STEM leadership group are not given the same opportunity as other groups. Please consider changing this to an in-person event. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call Mr. Lowry, who would like to speak to the board. And you have 2 forms here, but both of these items it's on the agenda, so you can speak about both of them now.
Oh, all right, great, thank you. So as you know, as the executive director for Erie County Association of School Boards, I get around to all the school board meetings at Iroquois. This is my 2nd meeting, so I guess you're lucky. We got 5 more schools to go to yet. Just wanted to provide an update on our lobby day. Our program services manager, Jane Sullivan, and your board president organized a wonderful event. We started at 8 o'clock in the morning and we ended it at about 4:30 this evening. We ended up meeting with Assemblymen Conrad, Rivera, Burke, Norris, Assemblywoman McMahon, Wallace, Crystal Peoples-Stokes, Senators Kennedy, Rath, Ryan, and Gallivan. And we covered a lot of ground. We covered foundation aid, mental health, teacher shortages, the BOCES salary cap. And one of the board members brought up the capital outlay projects, which can be $100,000. However, by the time you get architects and everyone else involved, it drops down to about $85,000. So they asked to expand that to the $200,000 range so that it would give schools more flexibility. The other thing is, on the call, we had many of the legislators that we would asked them if there was anything that they wanted us to help move along. And actually, Bill Conrad has a bill that he is co-sponsoring with the CVA, the Child's Victim Act. And with that, basically what they would be looking for is those districts that have maybe cases from the 1950s and 60s where they can't even trace who the insurance company was, or the people that were involved are no longer available. There would be a fund that would be set up for that, so that they would be able to provide the compensation that's deserved. Our budget and finance team was supposed to hold a virtual event in February. That's been moved to March 21st, and the topic will be on capital projects. The presenter is going to be Daniel Pecos, who's the superintendent of the Lakeshore School District. He used to be their business administrator. They had several capital projects taking place at Lakeshore. Prior to that, he was involved with Erie Two BOCES in their business department, and that's going to be a 45-minute virtual program. So hopefully people will be able to attend that. We do have the in-person prospective school board member workshop at the end of March from 8 to 10:30 a.m. It will be at 355 Harlem Road. You need to contact our office and register for that. We will have Carl Christoph from Hodgson Russ as the main presenter, and Matt Weistrick, the superintendent from West Seneca. We'll talk about the board and superintendent relationships. We also have the ECSB award nominations. They close on March 3rd, so take a good look around at your board, see who you would like to nominate. You have about 3 weeks left to do that. Also, we have the Get to Know BOCES program, which we were currently looking at in March. We will probably push that back to April. It looks like at this point we will, if we do hold it, we will probably be holding it out at Springville at the P-TECH program. The P-TECH program is a wonderful program where it's a 5-year program. Students come in at the 8th grade level. When they leave after 5 years, they have their certificate, they have their high school graduation, and they have a 2-year college degree as well. So it's a wonderful program. The only problem that we have is after 4 years, we have a lot of businesses that are coming in and offering these students jobs at $65,000, $70,000. And some of the students are saying, why am I going to wait another year? So we're working on developing that. So I think that would be a great presentation for people to be at. So that wraps it up with Erie County School Boards. The other topic that I was going to talk about was the Iroquois Foundation, and I'm on the board there. We have deadlines for the Wall of Fame coming up. We extended that to April 29th. And then we also have the senior scholarship. And usually what happens is all the scholarships come in at the very last minute. So we're working with the guidance department to hopefully get the word out. We're currently the Wall of Fame pictures are housed in the district office, outside the district office. And we're entertaining the idea of possibly having a place in the high school where it would just be the current or the most current year. And then after that year, we would then move them over to the district office. We feel that that might be a more impact for the high school students when they walk by and they see there might be more parents coming in, alumni coming into the high school building as opposed to coming to the Board of Education or the district offices. So we're entertaining that idea, and we'll be coming forward in the future with a proposal on that. We will also be having a direct donation button on our website where people can donate directly to the foundation. And we're also looking at how to best promote the mini grants for education among the teaching staff. We'd really like to increase those. And we've had a request to utilize the foundation website as a resource for various class reunions. So we're taking a look at that and expanding that. And if you ever have any questions, we meet the first Monday of each month. You can let me know, and I'll bring any issues to the foundation group. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is all of the people who asked to be recognized. So that brings us to discussion on agenda items 11.2 through 11.5.8. Is there any discussion?
We did congratulate KJ for her retirement, but also
Definitely. Say that
Cynthia's in
again.
here. She's a bus driver. She's done a great job for us. We'll greatly miss her too.
Okay, so that brings us to the consensus agenda, 11.1A. Is there a request to withdraw specific items from the agenda?
There is actually one, 11.4.9.9, only part of it, just the ticket salesperson. There's a little thing we have to take care of with that, so we're just going to withdraw that one item off of there, and then we will see it back next month. So we are still going to sell tickets.
I move to remove that item from 11.4.9.9.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Is there a request to add a specific item to the agenda? No? Okay, then is there a request to approve the consensus agenda, items 11.2 through 11.5.8, disregarding the item that we just pulled in 11.4.9?
So moved, Louise.
I'll take Louise. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All righty, motion carries. Okay, gotta turn a lot of pages. And that brings us to, yeah, we don't have any other guests, that's 12, so we do not need an executive session. So that brings us to 14, adjournment. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Can I have a second? No, thank you. Discussion,
They're
all in
flying.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries, we are adjourned.
I was gonna see how long you could draw it out.